is a very dark place now.
Yeah.
A lot of witchcraft and the Wiccan community has really taken over there. And we can't let that happen in Virginia.
The man you just heard making that statement now runs the U.S. Navy. And tonight's primetime focus, meet Hung Cao. In the midst of the biggest war since the invasion of Iraq, Pete Hegseth decided to fire his Navy secretary, and he replaced him with Cao, who told a Christian nationalist pastor in 2023 that witches had taken over a town in California and that he was running for the U.S. Senate to make sure it didn't happen in Virginia. A little bit of history about Cao. He immigrated to the United States as a child after his family fled Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He ran for Congress in 2022 and lost. He ran for Senate in 2024, lost again. But during those campaigns, Cao wasn't afraid to embrace controversy.
I know I'll be attacked by the left and call me white supremacist, but I have one ask for them. It's just when you give me my hood, make sure it's got the little slits and not the circles so I can see better.
What we need is alpha males and alpha females who are going to rip out their own guts, eat them, and ask for seconds. Those are young men and women that are going to win wars.
Yeah, and now Hung Cao is the 10th person to serve as Navy Secretary across Donald Trump's 2 terms. And he's been plucked to lead the largest and most well-funded Navy in the world in the middle of the Iran war. Now go back to where we started with that witchcraft interview. The man Hung Cao said it to is named Sean Feucht. He's a Christian nationalist. That's not a smear or an exaggeration, name-calling. It's quite literal, in fact. He has said on camera that he wants Christians, and only Christians, writing the laws based on biblical law. So when Hung Cao went on Sean Feucht's show in 2023 and warned about witches, that was not a one-off. That was just Hung Cao being Hung Cao. Joining us now to discuss is Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander. Congresswoman, you served as a Navy intelligence officer for more than a decade. You now sit on the House Armed Services Committee. From the inside view of someone who has both worn the uniform, sits on the committee with jurisdiction there, what is your reaction to this new leadership of the Navy?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Look, here's what I'd say. This is unfortunately completely consistent with what we've seen from the least transparent and most poorly run Pentagon in American history, with Pete Hegseth at the helm. This is a time for serious people, and the United States Navy needs a secretary that can lead the force in the middle, as you pointed out, of a war of choice that is costing the American people gravely in lives and in taxpayer dollars. So this is a moment for serious leadership, and that is the exact opposite of what we're seeing from this Pentagon.
So Hung Cao was confirmed as Navy Undersecretary, and he also received 3 Democratic votes in the Senate to assume the role. If he is nominated to move beyond the acting designation and to become Naval Secretary, do you support that nomination, or what would you recommend to your Senate colleagues?
Here's what I'd say. This is a time for serious people, and the Senate's job is to look at the experience and the judgment of any candidate, any nominee that comes before them. When it comes to the judgment of this man, the statements that you've played and what I've read already really cast great doubt on his judgment and ability to lead in the middle of this war. So what I'd say is we're going to see finally Pete Hegseth before the Senate Armed Services Committee next week. He has a lot of questions to answer, and he owes explanations to the American people. And anyone serving in a position of public trust, at an absolute minimum, owes exactly that to the American people.
What is the most pressing question that you think he needs to answer for right now? Is it the conduct of the war? Is it the seeping Christian nationalist ideology that is permeating the upper echelons of the Pentagon and the culture that he's created there as the leader of it? What is it that you want him to answer for?
There are a long list of questions, but at bottom, my biggest concern with Pete Hegseth, he obviously lacked the experience, he lacks the judgment to be serving in this position, which is one of the most powerful jobs in the world. It's a position of extraordinary public trust. And what we've seen is a Secretary of Defense who is apparently not strong enough or confident enough in himself to tell the President of the United States the truth and to be running our armed forces, the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world. And I think, unfortunately, that's why we find ourselves in the middle of a war of choice, which had no clear objectives to begin with and has no clear end game right now as we sit amidst a massive naval blockade with no clear path to victory for the United States of America. This Secretary of Defense has put this country in a position where the president has started a war that looks like we may well lose. And we've already lost lives, and we're already seeing every day hardworking people in this country who are paying the price of this reckless war of choice. So there are so many questions for the Secretary of Defense to account for. But my main question is, why won't he be honest with the president and lead this department in the way that it needs to be led?
Congresswoman, right now we are going to have 3 airstrike carriers all in the Gulf. My understanding is that that has not been the case for a couple of decades, that leaves potentially other parts of the world a little bit that we might care about, including in East Asia, perhaps, less well guarded, less secure. What do you think, or are you concerned, I should say, about potential naval readiness, given how many resources have been sent to the Gulf?
I am praying for the safety and for the success of every United States sailor, of every man and woman in our armed forces right now. I think they've been put in a terrible position, and I do worry because what we're seeing is historic in so many ways that we would not want to see history be made. And you point out 3 aircraft carriers in that area of deployed forward right now, one for, I think, the longest period in American history that we've ever seen a deployment quite like this. This puts a real stress on people who have raised their right hand and sworn an oath to our Constitution and are putting their lives on the line. You know, it comes back to the core issue here. These are the most grave and consequential decisions that can be made, that any president could make, to send our men and women in uniform to war. And what we've seen from before the beginning of this war being launched was a failure to plan, a failure to execute, a failure to keep our people safe, and above all, a failure of this president to explain how this is going to end well and how we're going to make this a victory for the United States of America, because right now the American people are paying a horrible price.
All right, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insights this evening.